All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We've got a really good show for you guys lined up this afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys all for joining us here. We are joined. You know what? I'm going to bring in my guest right away. And the first guest that I'm going to bring in is that he's actually my co-host. And this is I didn't promote this. And it's my fault because I got all mixed up. But without further ado, guys, he needs no introduction. Mr. Q himself, Nick.
Mr. Q. Yep, it's me, Q. Everyone. Yep.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I just got the link about 3 minutes ago, and I'm here.
Yeah, dude, that's my bad, man. Today's been a hectic day running around trying to get stuff done, and I completely forgot to send you the link. So I apologize for that. I'm really glad you can make it, though. This is going to be a really awesome interview. I'm excited about this. Up today, guys, we have a great opportunity to sit down and pick the brain of a man that has been in and out these machines. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to this CISA report that just got released. We're going to get all into that. We're going to get into Colorado, Georgia, all of it. So without further ado, the lone raccoon himself, Mr. Jeff O'Donnell. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show.
Awesome. I'm so glad to have you on this show. This is going to be a very interesting show because, last week we sent the mainstream media into an absolute meltdown. Like some of the stuff that I heard coming out of CNN, just absolutisms, that none of these vulnerabilities have ever been exploited, definitively saying never. So they're in full-blown meltdown mode. And Jeff, we're definitely going to dive into the significance of what came out in that CISA advisory and speculate a little bit on the Halderman report itself. But before we do that, we have to go back and look at where we're at right now and how we got to where you're at. So before we talk, that starts with Mesa, I think. Maybe I'm off, but before we get into that, Jeff, if you can, just give an overview of your credentials, your expertise, if you will.
Sure. I've been a software engineer, database engineer, all the things for 40 years. Worked with a variety of companies like Rockwell and Westinghouse Nuclear, and I would take the whole show probably to list them all. But I've basically been doing this for a long, long time. University of Pittsburgh grad, 82. I don't mention that often, but I want to give a shout out to my Panthers. But I spent a lot of time, especially with what they call now big data applications. Basically, you've got data with millions or potentially billions of data points, and trying to make sense of them through software and database procedures. So when I had the opportunity to look at the Mesa County information, I was actually had friends who said, you got to look at this. I'm like, I'm sure there's hundreds of people looking at this. And they're like, no, I think you like know all this stuff. They said, you need to look at this. So I think I really was accidentally well positioned, experience-wise, to be able to evaluate kind of the whole enchilada of Mesa. And it does, I think, when you say, it starts with Mesa, it really does, because Mesa is, I think, going to be remembered as the game changer because it provided, I use the term a Rosetta Stone. Not only did it show us evidence, actual evidence of a couple different kinds of manipulation. When I say manipulation, you can go ahead and replace fraud with that. I went into this though as I did not expect to find anything because while I have the same misgivings as everyone else after the election, I certainly didn't. I thought that a coordinated effort to steal an election would certainly be competent enough to probably cover their tracks so well that no one would ever find it. And not knowing, I put my researcher hat on, and spent as much time in the early days trying to show that everything was fine as much as I did trying to find that there were problems. But the problem was just stuck out like a sore thumb. And like I said, it's been a Rosetta Stone that has enabled us to look at counties all over the country for similar effects. Because the things that happened in Mesa, they caused certain things to happen in the voting patterns in a number of different ways that were unnatural. And so I can't stress how important to the voter integrity effort, election integrity effort, that Mesa information is.
Absolutely. Real quick, Nick, hold that thought. I heard you say Pittsburgh 82, and I see the Steelers thing out in the background there. So you're a bit of a football fan. I got to ask, what was it like watching Dan Marino play?
I actually saw him play live, and I'm still upset that the Steelers didn't draft him.
I'm from Miami, so when you said you graduated 82, that's the same year Marino entered. Yeah. Well, he entered the NFL in 83, and he went to Pitt. So yeah. I wanted to just get that. All right, go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that I'm pretty sure without Mesa, we wouldn't know about these trusted builds. That was the point where we realized these software updates are a tactic used by Dominion to wipe the evidence. If it weren't for Tina Peters obtaining the before and after, we wouldn't know that. And they're doing it everywhere now.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, we knew there was such a thing that they called the trusted build. And we had a pretty good idea that from places like Maricopa and other places that it wasn't done. But now we had the actual before and after of what happened when they installed this trusted build. And we're able to verify 100% it does indeed wipe out every piece of election data and any other data that happens to be on the election server.
All right, so going into Mesa, and that was absolutely incredible. I was at the symposium when Clerk Peters and Sharona Bishop and Sean Smith and all of them were there going through all this. I was there. It was really impressive to see the work and the guts that Clerk Peters has in doing what she did. She was obligated to do it, and she did it. And not many people. I mean, obviously, Clerk Schroeder also did it. A couple others, hopefully a couple others. But the guts that she had in doing that was respectable. What machines is the Mesa specifically dealing with?
It's dealing with their remaining their election server, which is a Windows server. It's a Dell server model. So that's really that's where the database lives. That's where any tallied vote totals live in the data, and that's where the only true representation of the different batches. If I use the word batch, they don't scan these ballots one at a time. They put them into a pile. In Mesa, it was 100. It depends upon the capacity of the scanners in whatever county, but I want to say batch, but that's the only place that that keeps record of the times that they were scanned in and just everything about them.
So when you were doing your analysis on Mesa, I don't want to spend a crazy amount of time on this, but give me an overview of what you found in the Mesa 3 report. And this is the database creations. If you can give us just a layman's explanation, if you will.
Well, the layman's explanation is that when they got about 25,000 votes counted, now they started counting the absentee votes on the 19th of October. So, a couple of weeks before the election. And on the third day of counting, by that time, they'd already counted, they'd processed 25,000 votes. And in the afternoon on the 23rd, with nobody in that office knowing what was going on, something woke up behind the scenes, created new databases. Databases are like a sort of a super spreadsheet that's on a system that contains data about a number of. It can have different tables. Each table can be think of like a sheet if you have a spreadsheet with multiple sheets. It's a way of looking at it. Well, suddenly it duplicated 2 of those databases, the ones that specifically that deal with when ballots and batches come in. It's the records of how many ballots, what they are, each individual ballot, whether it can tell what the ovals are on it, because the computer first of all looks and sees if it can tell what the votes were, and if it can, then it just tallies them and they get added into the to the main tally, the main counting. If it can't, then it kicks it out for what's called adjudication, and you got a Republican and a Democrat or an independent who actually look at the image and they say, okay, the guy meant to vote for this, or we can't tell either, so no vote for you, no suit for you. The databases are the ones that keep track of every ballot that comes in, every batch of ballots, if it was adjudicated, who did it, what the changes were. Pretty important information, all things considered. And they got recreated. 20,000 of those 25,000 got copied to that new database. 5,500 were left behind, which is a separate issue. But the 20,000 that were copied over, again, nobody in the office knew this was going on at Mesa. They're copied over and reprocessed. And what I mean by reprocessed is the system acted like they had been basically rescanned. Now, they weren't rescanned. It was just the data records and the ballot images and things like that that were rescanned, reprocessed, and from everything we can tell, recounted. So you have these 20,000 that are going through this. And the tip-off for me, other than the fact that none of this, as you can well imagine, this meant that when I went to try to compare the numbers of things in different parts of the system, none of them came to the same numbers. That was one of the first things. But the number of ballots that it decided needed humans to look at wasn't the same, even though it was the same, supposedly, ballots as the first time. There were differences. And then from then, after that point, that new database was the only one visible to the clerks. I mean, that new database was now the database that was used for the system. So you got these 5,500 original votes, along with that are the only place they exist is now in a database that's like disconnected from the election system. And then you got these 20,000 that were looked at again. That in a nutshell is what happened. And the kicker is it happened again in the 2021 municipal election. This time it was about 8,000 votes in, and 4,000 were tucked away in the first set of books. I like to use that. It's like at that point there were two set of books, and one of them was locked away in the desk drawer with those, and then the other one was recounted. About 4,000 each way in the other one. And the really scary thing about that is that, to my mind, brings all of those 8,000 votes extremely into question. And the four city council races, the largest margin was 3,000 votes. So you've got 8,000 in question. You've got the largest margin being 3,000. And you also have, and for what it's worth, a lot of people in Grand Junction and Mesa County who, they felt the morning after that municipal election, like all of us felt when we woke up on November 4th. The guy who everyone kind of knew was going to win didn't. 3 or 4 of them.
Let me interrupt you real quick there, Jeff, because we're going off and we're talking about 2021 and the elections that went on there, and there is significance to that, because they did, in fact, in Mesa County, they did vote to renew the contract with these machines, and I think that's significant. When you look at the race, I don't know if this is probably something, and I apologize for asking this if you don't know the answer, but like you were saying, was there any candidate that was glaringly against the machines, or more of this America First type candidate? Was there any reason that there would be this discrepancy, this manipulation utilized in the 2021 election as well?
I would just say that, technically speaking, it was a nonpartisan election. They don't put the parties on those city council races. However, it is of interest that the 4 people who won those were all they were liberal. They were the liberal candidates, and it was the conservative candidates who lost. I have not heard. I mean, I have not heard that any of them was particularly outspoken about any election issues at that point. At least, doesn't mean they weren't, but that's something I haven't heard.
So, can I ask a quick question? Because I'm sort of a dumb guy when it comes to the tech stuff, and what I always try to do is take the time to understand it and make it simpler. So I want to make sure I get this correctly, because this is what it sounds like you just said to me. So basically, what's within the database is what constitutes adjudication, right? Okay, so what it sounds like they did was at a certain point, they created a new database which had different configurations, right? So that, let's say in the first database, if a ballot oval is, marked outside of this circle, then it gets sent to adjudication. Okay, now we create a new database where those parameters are different.
There's no evidence that the parameters were changed at all. That's more evidence.
So
something changed.
More ballots got sent to adjudication in the second database? Yeah. Okay, so there's something there. It's the same ballots.
Presumably. Presumably. I mean, it is certainly possible to alter ballot images. I could do it. I mean, there's nothing in my particular theories of how this worked out and how they did this. There is nothing beyond my own capabilities. And I'm not saying I'm that great a thing, but there's nothing beyond my own capabilities of saying, yeah, now that I have a pretty good idea of what happened, it wouldn't have been that difficult for a competent programmer to do. And a competent programmer can do things like alter images and change timestamps and all manners of things. And I tell people, some people kind of fall into a little pit of saying, oh yeah, well they cheated here and here, but they'd never do this. And is it not the way to think in this particular case? Because if you say, well, yeah, okay, they manipulated ballots and they manipulated images and they got into the database and were able to do this and that, but they'd never alter the ballot images. And my answer is why not? Because it kind of would be very, very handy for them to do.
Well, we have to. I'm trying to tell a story here, and so if we had more ballots sent to adjudication, but there's no evidence that they changed the parameters of what gets sent to adjudication, then we kind of have a missing puzzle piece here. And I'm wondering if you have any theories on why did more ballots get sent to adjudication in the second database?
Yeah, my theory is that, I'll just say it. My theory is that they changed the processing on a certain number of those ballots because the vote was not coming in as they expected, as the computer algorithm, the program was expecting. So, and they had gotten to a point where they needed to step in and change a few votes. And I think that what you're seeing is that when it went in, this is one explanation, and it fits the facts, that it went in and it altered a certain number of these to get the numbers to where they wanted. And some of the ones they altered were most likely some of the ones that were sent to adjudication the first time. But since they were altered and processed differently, they weren't sent to adjudication that time because they were handled differently. And I don't think, I think the fact that some went to adjudication the second time would indicate that those probably weren't manipulated. So they went through the same way they did the first time. That is my theory. It fits the facts. And I think I have a lot of different types of evidence that points to that.
I want to pull this up, guys. Don't mind Joe's face down there. But I actually grabbed this. I was watching your Conservative Daily podcast with them again. I watched it in live real time, but I was watching it again earlier today just to refresh myself, if you will. And I found this slide to be very interesting because this is kind of evidence, more evidence to suggest what you're talking about, Jeff. So if you can, for my listeners out there, I'm going to make this full screen. If you can, just explain what this slide is here.
Yeah, in the November 2020 election, what I just described to you created a situation where there are three sets of ballots that we're talking about. The first set, which is in that the first column, were the 5,500 ballots. They were pretty much the first ones that came in, by the way, and were processed, that were left behind in the database that was no longer used. So those were essentially hidden away. The clerks could not have accessed them. They weren't reprocessed. They were just left there. Okay. When I figured out what the votes were reported, now understand that because of the way Dominion architecture of their database is, there's no way to tell what they were originally. Any of these things might have been originally if they were changed. All we know is what they're reporting at the end. And when you look at those 5,500, they were 50-50 between Trump and Biden. Actually, Biden had 3 more votes than Trump did. But it doesn't even show in the percentage, but it was 50-50. Now, Mesa, it's important to understand, to give you a little perspective, 2016, Trump got roughly 68%, I believe, of the presidential vote in 2016. And this is typical. Mesa is a 68 to 70% red county, traditionally. Well, anyway, those first 5,500, these are just mail-in votes, and it's very important to understand. I'm only going to show you or talk about mail-in votes because mail-in votes, they ask for a mail-in or absentee application when you think about it. You fill it out when you think about it. You send it in when you think. The mail takes however long to get there. Point is that all of our evidence is that these things, mail-in votes, are received in every county, roughly random, within a few percentage points. You get an occasional wiggle here or there, but it's essentially random. Well, these first 5,500 came in at 50-50. Now, the 20,000, actually 19,000 and some were mail-ins, and we're only looking at mail-ins again, so we're not getting any kind of, well, Trump people vote on election day and Biden people vote via absentee mail-in. No, we're just looking at the mail-in themselves. The mail-in, those 19,000, the mail-ins, after the reprocessing operation, were reported as 51-48, 49, basically 51-49 when you round up. Once again, Trump only slightly over 50-50. If you actually combine those two categories, it's 50.5 to 49.5. It's very close. Now,
let me just Jeff, real quick. Let me just reiterate for the people because it's very difficult to read on if they're watching on a phone or whatever. So the first column, the first bar graph on the left, folks, those are 50-50. Those are the first 5,500 votes. The second column that Jeff just explained is 51.4% to 48.6, and that accounts for 19,000. Now combined, Jeff, those two are the 25,000 that you're talking about in the databases, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so folks, for those of you that are watching, those first two graphs are the ballot images that actually went to this second database that the machine created. These are the numbers that were reported from that database. Okay, so going on to the third graph, go ahead, take it away, Jeff.
Yeah, so in between the second and the third is the reprocessing operation that I told you about on the 20th, on the third day of counting. And the rest of the votes, over 50,000 mail-in votes that were brought in after that point and processed, were a 67% Trump to 32.6% Biden. The difference between those three categories, as I was saying before the show, I can definitely make an analysis of this, but I think anyone who sees these is going to maybe understand without me even having to drive you there. Remember, these are mail-in votes. They are received, fairly randomly. We call pseudo-randomly in the business. Oh, that's good. That's very good. Okay. So at that point, you can see that the first 25,000, roughly 50-50, the next 55,000, tremendously tremendously toward Trump at numbers that are sort of traditional Mesa County numbers. The fourth one shows you what the effect of every vote, all three of those columns together. Okay. And you'll see that whatever happened in those first 25,000 votes had the effect of bringing the last 50,000 with a swing of about 10 or 11%, about five or so down on Trump's percentage and 5 or so up for Biden's percentage, roughly. So this to me validates that when I saw that, it validated my theory / assumption / opinion that those 20,000 had indeed been reprocessed, recounted, because the people hadn't voted the right way. So the software had to step in and correct them.
And that's significant because, when in the grand scheme of things, something like that goes unnoticed. When we were at the symposium, I actually had a clip that was aired on CNN because there was a brief moment where I stood up and said, folks, what the hell does Colorado have? Like, nobody's even questioned Colorado, and look at what we're seeing in Colorado, and look at what we're seeing now in New Mexico with Professor Clements and Aaron Clements down in New Mexico going through the same type of thing. We're now getting and this is where I kind of want to transition a little bit because I want to compare Mesa to these places. We're getting the EAC report out of Williamson, Tennessee on the ImageCast ICX machines. We're getting the report now based on Halderman's findings in Georgia. Where are the similarities? Let's focus on those three: the Williamson EAC report, the CISA advisory out of Georgia, and the Mesa County. Your experience with Mesa County. What are the similarities between these three that you see going from the EAC report in Tennessee to the Mesa report?
Well, the Tennessee one was very interesting because it described a case where all of a sudden the system would start marking every ballot as provisional. Thus, provisional ballots are handled very differently by different counties. I mean, how they handle them, how they figure out if they're right or not, and it would be a lot easier to try to figure out the proper way to say this. It would be a lot easier to force these provisionals, for instance, into manual adjudication by humans. It would. They also are counted at the very end, which could be useful for a couple of different ways. So the Mesa information that I had was from the database in the system. One thing that in the Tennessee situation happened at the more or less the tabulator level of the scanner. So it is interesting, and I'm in general they both point to something that isn't good, obviously. There weren't a overload of provisional ballots, at least not that's admitted to in any of the things in Mesa. So I'm not sure what the specific relationship is, other than here you have another part of the system which is being affected by some software process that shouldn't be done. They'll say it was a software error or something like that, or something like that. But the point is, you still have ballots being interpreted differently than they should. So
after a trigger point.
Yeah.
Something triggers it.
Yeah, exactly. So something triggered it. And I think that there's probably a lot more to that situation. And I hope that the research is continuing and they're not just going to say, oh, well, we figured that out.
Well, they already said we figured that out.
Oh, yeah. But I'm hoping that there are others who will be able to look into a little more.
Yeah. Now, so on that note, they said on February 11th, 2022, Dominion submitted the root cause analysis. The report indicates that erroneous code is present in the EAC certified system. And this is something I bring up constantly whenever I talk about this. How the hell do you have erroneous code on one of these, critical infrastructure devices? It is critical infrastructure in the United States. How do you have erroneous code on that? And then how does it pass certification still with said erroneous code on it? I mean, that to me sounds like our certification is wanting big time.
You hit the nail on the head there. How does a system pass certification? With now that we know about this is a very, very easy thing to recreate. It doesn't require a whole lot of trouble, to get it to do this. Now that we do it, I think that I see this all over the place. In that problems that come up are waved off as, oh, this was an error. This was somebody did something wrong. But all of them come back to the point where, first of all, why weren't some of these things caught in certification? And secondly, when you're talking about things that happen at the tabulator scanner level, they run something called logic and accuracy tests before the election that are supposed to test every potential possible type of ballot, combinations of everything. And in county after county, I see things that are explained away by, oh, this was just a mistake by a clerk or something like that. The whole reason that you have the logic and accuracy test is that so you mistakes aren't either they're not going to happen or they're going to get caught immediately instead of months later or years. So and the direct cause is inconclusive. That doesn't make any sense.
Well,
they've got the source code.
It really doesn't make sense because they said the direct cause of the anomaly was inconclusive. But of course, don't worry, we successfully fixed it. We don't know what was wrong with it, but we fixed it. That would be like going into a mechanic and saying my car doesn't run, and the mechanic says, yeah, we don't know what was wrong with it, but don't worry, it runs fine now. How it's only a matter of time before you're driving down the street and all of a sudden that bad alternator comes up and you got a dead battery again. So I mean the level of success in repairing this, we don't know. The fact that it wouldn't. So Jeff, do you know how this anomaly was caught?
I read it. I don't recall right offhand.
So I actually somebody sent me the affidavit of the poll worker that caught this, and what they did is they sat there while the election was going on and they tallied how many people voted at each particular tabulator. And at the end of the night, when they printed out the results tape, the poll tapes, she said, hey, this ain't right. This says only 36 people voted on this tabulator, and I think 165 some odd people voted on it. And they said, whoa, that's not right. That's an anomaly right there. And she raised hell with it.
Is that something she did on her own accord, or is that part of the procedures?
Nope, that's something she was doing on her own. She was just sitting there at the table and just marking a little tally mark for every single time somebody went to a particular ballot, and they cracked open the tabulators and pulled the ballots out and hand counted and said, hey, she's right. We got 160 ballots here and we only counted 35 or whatever it was.
Yeah, these types of things are only found when somebody pushes back, like Michelle Long Spears in DeKalb County, demanding a hand recount. I mean, if it weren't for that, then you would have the wrong person in office, and you would never know. And it's not like their own procedures and practices in place safeguard and make sure you catch these things. No, it's always somebody who decided to take it into their own hands and force them to look at something. Otherwise, you'd never know that this issue even existed.
Yep.
Well, if Tina had not done what she did to get that image before Dominion wiped it out, we would know nothing of these findings that are Report 3 or Report 2 for that matter, or 1. But there would be no way to tell what happened without actually looking inside at the database and associated things with that. No way. There is no evidence outside of that. It would have been gone forever, like it's gone forever, I guess, in Maricopa, like it's gone forever, I guess, in Fulton. I don't think they caught those in time before they were wiped out. I hope I'm wrong, but that's where we're going. The reason, there has been no database analysis on Fulton, no database analysis on Maricopa. I mean, all these places because of, they were wiped out.
And to that point, when we find these things, the solution is always, okay, well, Dominion's going to come in and do a trusted build, software update, and they're going to, fix it, patch it, make sure it never happens again. How are we supposed to entrust you to fix it when you're the one that broke it in the first place? You developed a machine with all these vulnerabilities, the ImageCast X. Oh, but we're going to come in and we're going to do a software update and it's not going to be an issue anymore. Excuse me. I don't, I'm not going to hire the guy that robbed my house to, provide security. It doesn't make any sense.
I use the phrase all the time, chickens should never hire foxes to build the hen house. And that's, I think, an apt metaphor. You want to get into the CISA alert from last week now, as far as that?
Yeah, real quick before we go into that, Nick. First off, I just pulled that up real quick because you bring up the trusted build, and of course, that's how they fixed the Williamson County.
Of course, it is.
A trusted build of the modified source code was performed to produce the updated ICP software. That's almost as bad as Fulton County the other day saying, I don't think we should say restore faith in the elections. I think we need to say maintain faith in the election because people already have faith in the elections here in Fulton County. Right.
Right. Of course.
Jeff, before we get into the CISA report, I want to ask you, because we're talking now mainly about Mesa, Williamson, and Georgia. This is just off cuff. If there's have you seen any similarities or any discrepancies that mirror what was reported in the Maricopa audit, the Ben Cotton, Doug Logan audit? Did you see anything that mirrored that in any way or resembled that?
Yes.
Can you talk just a little bit to it? I mean, I don't want to go crazy about it, but can you just give us, some of the highlights?
Well, obviously, we don't have the database to compare to see what happened in Maricopa. What we do have are the results of the election, and we have a lot of analysis that I'm doing and people I work with is on something called a cast vote record. If you don't know what that is, you should, because a cast vote record is think of it as a spreadsheet with every line being a ballot in the order they were processed, and the ballot, it may have what tabulating machine it was tabulated on, and then what the votes were on it. So you can say, okay, this ballot voted for this guy for president, this guy for Senate. Doesn't say anything about the voter, doesn't break any voter secrecy laws or anything like that. This enables you to replay the election from start to finish.
Okay. And
it is the analysis of these cast vote records, when combined with a couple other things, that show what, the term fingerprint of fraud I've been using. There are certain things about the voting patterns that are caused by this manipulation that show up everywhere. And they certainly show up in Maricopa. Now, I've had a chance to talk to some of the people who were involved in that and compare notes. There was an awful lot more methods used in Maricopa than there was in Mesa. There was a lot more, apparently, ballot muling. I mean, I use that term. That can be a verb now, right? Thanks to 2000, muling. Just like, and there was a little, I'm convinced there was a little muling. Those 5,500 we're talking about in Mesa. Yeah, I think those were muled in. Now, were they stuffed in ballot, in boxes, or were they just entered into the mail system somehow? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I think that probably happened. Well, I think that everything that happened in Maricopa, being a much, much larger and much, much more important county to the overall election, had everything that happened in Mesa writ large, supersized.
Yeah.
And then that wasn't even enough, and they had to do apparently even more there to get those last few votes, get them over the finish line. But so yes, there are similarities, and from a case of the the whole trusted build thing overriding everything that happened there too. But again, I can only judge Maricopa and some of these other counties by the effect, because the cause has been destroyed. The evidence of anything that happened inside has been destroyed. But I would say Maricopa and probably about 70 other counties that I've had a chance to look at have striking similarities to what happened in Mesa.
Now, I'm not going to, and we're going to jump into CISA in just one more second, I promise. I don't want to beat this dead horse too much, because we did a whole episode on the show about this. I pushed people over to Conservative Daily when you were on there after the Rubenstein hearing, but I just want to, so this guy, this district attorney, Dan Rubenstein, I think is his name, comes out and does this dog and pony show. It was I was laughing. I think the only thing funnier than that hearing was the fact that Joe Biden got 81 million votes, and they want us to believe that. That hearing was absolutely ridiculous. You just tell me how insane is it to refute a computer science expert such as yourself that actually looked at log files and all this other stuff? How insane is it to refute that with grainy 480p video footage from the corner of a room saying that because this screen looks like this, they didn't therefore do this? Yes,
but between me and the Dr. Doherty, who also verified and signed off on the report, you've got 80 years of technical experience, and for him to use, if you're going to refute technical facts or technical opinions, you need to do it from a technical background. Instead, you had two politicians up there trying to refute a highly technical report, and doing it with one of those screens, somebody could have been ordering something from Victoria's Secret, I think. Another one looks like somebody was about to win Minesweeper, I think. I've looked at them pretty closely. The point is, if I do not understand why they even did this with so little to bolster their point. The best heroes get the best enemies, and I guess I'm not doing very well, because if that's the level of my enemies, I need to level up or something. I don't know. And then don't forget, right about the time, or actually encompassing the time that the manipulation happened in the 2021 election, we have 2 minutes and 30 some seconds of missing footage, because evidently somebody decided to do a flash mob and freeze in the office everyone or something for 2 minutes and 38 seconds. I'm trying to contact the Nixon Presidential Library to see if maybe they have that missing, 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Haven't heard back from them yet, but I'll update you if I do. The point is, it is laughable. When I heard he was coming out with something, I was, okay, a little wary. Let's see what maybe they found something, but it was just, it was essentially just an attack on one of the clerks who they already are attacking. So it's just piling on to one of the clerks, and an attempt to make the authors of the report look uncooperative. That was really all they had.
What was funnier, the 2 minutes and 38 seconds that they said Sandra stayed perfectly still for and therefore turned off the camera, or the explanation of time drift?
I'm still trying to figure out that time drift thing. Many people have already made some jokes about it. I'm not even going to go there. But they just invented something out of thin air to explain away how weak their sauce was.
All right. Without further ado, folks, this is what we came here for. This is the meat and potatoes of today's episode. We introduce you to the ICS advisory from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or whatever the hell they stand for. They're another worthless bureaucracy group. Jeff, you're the first person that I think Well, I yesterday I spoke with Pat Colbeck, but we didn't go as in depth into the vulnerability overview. And I actually want to go through some of the vulnerabilities, and if you can kind of explain it in a way that lay people will understand. I don't know if every single one needs to be gone over. So just because I don't know this stuff, Jeff. Admittedly, okay,
Right.
this is a new process for me as well. So let's start with the first one: improper verification of cryptographic signature CWE 347. What in the heck does that mean?
It just means when you go to a website and you type in HTTPS instead of HTTP, you're using a security certificate to encrypt your information so that it can't be done. And when all they're talking about is, I'm just going to, this goes very deep into the weeds. All of these things are terrible, but that one just deals with the fact that the security can be spoofed. It can be you can get in without having the proper certificates, proper keys, and to me, even though those were listed very early, and they're terrible, they saved the really horrible things for later on. But that's what that has to do with. There's number. Just trying to see that.
Well, of course, these machines are air gapped, so of course that doesn't matter, right?
Of course. The hidden functionality thing on 223, that the ImageCast ballot marking device has a terminal emulator application. What a terminal emulator application basically means is, if you've ever done anything on a Windows computer or a Linux computer, it's a DOS prompt, it's a terminal, so just like that. The point is, when you get to that, you have extremely low level access, or high level, depending on what you look at it, but very powerful access to the system. So that's terrible. And I think let me just say right now, quite a few of these. When I read the advisory, my report lists the things that happened, but it's still there were some fuzzy areas. We didn't know exactly how they had been, how the rogue software maybe got on in there, how it was configured to know what to do, how it was when to trigger, that sort of thing. And frankly, after reading this advisory, I don't have that many questions anymore. Something to keep in mind here also is, forgive me for being maybe a little calloused, but when CISA comes out with this extremely damning document, it makes me wonder, wow, what else? What was the worst stuff they didn't want to admit to?
Yeah.
And I know how that sounds, but I think I think we've all earned the right to be suspicious of every part of this process.
Yeah, we've already learned that they watered down the recommendations on the ballots at the end. Halderman is pissed about that because he said that he recommends a full face ballot. And at the end, instead of saying that that's what Halderman recommends, all they simply said was that it's capable of printing out a full face ballot, not that it's recommended to use that. Go ahead, Nick. You had a question?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say it's important to understand CISA's motive behind this report is the Halderman report. I mean, they have to put this out there because the Halderman report is so damning. The only thing that really matters in the mainstream media and, to the people that say, call it the big lie, is the fact that they said this has never been exploited in an election, or Gabriel Sterling's assertion that, you would have to have somebody have direct access to these systems, and we have safeguards in place that prevent that from happening. So no big deal. That's why they did this. So they can put all these vulnerabilities, in a succinct package and say, yeah, these systems are completely vulnerable, but never been exploited and never would be because of our safe and secure election systems. But if I could say, Jeff, the first point that you said, which you said isn't the biggest point, I think it is a pretty big one because
they're all.
Well, I mean, and I read your report on this. The fact that a bad actor can give themselves elevated privileges and have like God mode access,
Oh, it's
just like we've seen. This is very, very similar to the Microsoft SQL software we found everywhere, where, which is unauthorized, by the way, by the EAC. If somebody can give themselves like the ability to change anything, that's a pretty big deal.
Anything. Yeah, I mean, they're all bad, and if you want, I can, I'd be happy to go through the rest of them and highlight the ones that, though,
Please.
I kind of wanted to highlight the ones that specifically I think relate to the things that we saw in Mesa.
Okay.
Now, you're right. A lot of these show how a rogue process could, even from the outside, grab hold of the system, have elevated privileges, be able to do anything they want to do. The 225 manipulated to cause arbitrary code execution by specifically crafted election definition files. This is more, if you have your own copy, highlight that with a yellow highlighter and put a couple stars around it, because one of the look at that. Because one question that comes up about Mesa and the implications of Mesa is the system, the rogue software, whatever the software is running behind, had to know what the goal was. It had to know, how many votes, whatever percentage points, what did we want the end to be, so it knew when things weren't going well. They could actually be done in the definition files, meaning in a lot of counties, the election is built. If you think about election being built, meaning, what ballots, what candidates, what contests, the basic nuts and bolts of what any election is going to be, is often prepared by third parties and then provided on a USB drive or something, which then put into the server, which then loads it in. This is essentially what this is describing. Specially crafted election definition files, and this is so specific that this is the one that I had to read it over like 6 times to wow, there you go. People say, a lot of people insist that there must have been online access to do what happened with the fraud, and while I can't say that there wasn't in some places, what you're seeing there is the method that could be doing this with no online access needed at all.
I've had a guy that has been hounding me since the beginning of all this that said, there's not an attacker, it's built into the machine. That this is algorithmically programmed into the machine. It's a feature, not an error type of thing. And so it seems like he's being vindicated here.
Definitely looks that way.
Yeah. So 226 has escalated privileges to install malicious code. What we was running in Mesa. That applies directly. The 227 authentication method can be spoofed. Again, you have a way that anybody can that can get past the very weak security of this can get elevated privileges. Let's see. I'm seeing the order here. Again, cryptographic secrets can be gotten out. Again, we're back to that whole security being flawed in this. These are all serious.
Jeff, let me ask you this, Jeff. Like when we're sitting here and they're going through all this and talking about these vulnerabilities and stuff, are these exploits or vulnerabilities that are deliberate, or is this something that is congruent with most software?
You may get a different opinion from others. I'll say that. But as someone who regularly in my past life before I got into this madness has to look at the reports that come out about vulnerabilities that are found and things like that, I personally have never seen one in the real world that had that many critical security flaws. This, as you're saying, this is critical infrastructure.
Absolutely.
If you found out that your banking system had this kind of problems, I don't think you would use the online banking again, or maybe not the bank as in a whole.
No, my money would be buried in my backyard.
Yeah, before you would do that. These are. It's a very, very unusual to me, in my experience. Again, others' mileage may vary, but to me, this is a large. So that's to answer the question. I think it very well points to the fact that these very well might have been features to allow, to allow whatever sort of malfeasance they wanted to have in the future. It's a sad state of affairs. Especially, you have to wonder what they're not saying. What else is there? Because the old thing. If you've done something really, really horrible, sometimes if you confess to doing something not nearly as horrible, then that can make the whole thing kind of go away, or at least for a while. And this is what this rings up for me. This is getting ahead of something worse, or trying to maybe get maneuver a position where they don't have to admit to something worse.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. Let me get these Rumble rants real quick. Andrew, thank you so much. Says patriots like Jeff are the reason we've come so far from quote unquote safest, most secure election ever to admitting quote erroneous code was present, end quote. Great comment there. Also, Rumble rant from Elvis Forever says great show. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Also, if you guys are a subscriber over on Locals, I am going to go through the chat over there. There's just a couple questions, and I'm going to ask those of Jeff at the end. So if you have a question, you're a Locals paid subscriber, jump over there and put it in the comment. And also, guys, Father's Day is coming up on Sunday. It's this Sunday, right? Yeah. This Sunday?
Is it? Oh.
Or is it next Sunday? It's your first Father's Day, Nick.
Is it?
It's your first Father's Day, right?
Yeah. But I was thinking about my own dad. I was like, oh, crap. My mom's birthday's today.
Well, anyway,
I remember that.
Father's Day is coming up, so jump on over to mypillow.com. Use promo code CanCon. Save $90 right now on my slippers, and I'm wearing them right now, and they are incredible. If you don't believe me, I'll take them off as soon as I get done with this plug. But yeah, jump over there. They also have buy one, get one premium My Pillows as well. So get your husband and yourself a My pillow, and you'll sleep like a dream. All right, so Jeff, you bring up a really good point, and that is what's in this CISA advisory is getting out in front of something, but are they going to get out in front of it fully? Because we've seen a lot of speculation. I've read all of Halderman's briefings in Curling v. Raffensperger, and he's alluded to. I know what he's going to say. I mean, you can listen to, like you were talking about the ballot images being marked in 2019 in DEF CON. 2 of his own students did a 20-minute presentation on how they can alter the ballot images, change votes, quicker than the ballots can scan, so it doesn't throw off any red flags. And Halderman has alluded to that in his briefings in Curling v. Raffensperger. So I think that's what we're going to see. And he's even said in the AP article that these machines can record votes inconsistent with the voter's intent and alter the votes. So when you look at this report out of CISA and you see all these critical vulnerabilities, do any of them scream to you it gives the ability for the machine to change votes in the QR code? Like, in other words, am I looking at this? I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question, not being a tech person. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, what Halderman's claiming about switching votes, do any of these vulnerabilities speak to that?
Yes, I mean the vulnerabilities center around the ability to insert malicious code into the system, and this is a very interesting thing because if you assume that the certification process works at least a little bit, then you have to assume that the source code reviews and things like that are supposed to occur. Let's assume that they did. And something that would manipulate, have the kind of manipulation that I just covered in Mesa, would have probably been caught. But this gives the ability to basically load code on the fly. So this would not have been code that was ever included in a source code review or that stuff. I mean, there still could be terrible things in that source code, and I think it should be looked at, but as soon as possible. But nevertheless, this actually gives them the ability to the phrase you've heard maybe side loading. This is essentially what we're talking about. It's an Android system into that, and people are saying, well, this is this image cast X. We're not talking about the server. It points out in there that from that platform, from that, it's an Android system, basically, like your phone, like some of your phones, that can then reach out to any other piece of hardware that is in the system. And so this is 100%. And the point is, you're asking, can it change votes? It could do anything. If you can side load code that nobody knows about, nobody's seen, it could literally do anything.
And this reminds me of Hari Hursty explaining to us in New Hampshire how if there was malicious code, it could be programmed one of two ways. One could be it stays housed in the machine and you can find it. The other one is it activates, it does its job, and then it destroys itself and you'll never find it.
Yep, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was just, I don't know, Jeff, I don't know how much you followed the New Hampshire, the audit that they did in Windham, New Hampshire, but me and Nick did a lot on that, Nick mainly. But we found, they had this anomalous machine up there out of 4 of them, just like you were showing with the votes earlier. You had, consistently Trump was getting, 55 to 45, 55, 45. And then all of a sudden you had one machine that just flipped and was like 60-40 or something like that for Biden. No difference in how the votes were distributed or anything like that. So when they actually did the audit, they had that machine, something went wrong with it, and they had to reset. So they reset the dates back to November 3rd to simulate the election. That one machine had something wrong with it, and it triggered the machine to go to November 4th. Yeah, because they had to repair a ball bearing. They said.
Bearings. Yeah. And we found a lot of people were like, Nick, why are you so focused on Windham? It's 10,000 ballots. Okay, but we got all the poll tapes. There's this one company, LHS Associates, which programs the memory cards for all of the machines of all of New England. Okay, and every single township, we found at least one machine where the results were flipped. And they always said, well, that's because, we processed the mail-in ballots through that machine at the end of the election or something like that. And it's like, well, if you look at the actual math of, Democrat versus Republican, how many voted, by mail, none of it makes sense. Obviously, there's manipulation at LHS Associates in the memory card, but they would not take a look at it. And there's always some sort of deflection to where they can make it an isolated incident, or if you catch them, okay, well, we need to go in and do a trusted build. And if that's not going to satisfy them, here's what they'll do. And this is what I would anticipate with these image cast X machines everywhere they're used, is if they're caught with their pants down, what they're going to do is attempt to either do a trusted build or switch machines and give Dominion another $100 million for new ones, or for newer models, or switch vendors to ES&S or HARD or something like that. They always have their way of wiggling out of these things, and we can't allow them to do that.
No, we can't. If we do, it won't. I mean, sounds simple. It won't change. Unless there's a price to pay for what they're doing, they're just going to keep on doing it. And that's why I think we're all in this, is to shine the light on what happened both in 2020 and use that to protect and defend all the elections coming up as well. We can't stop talking about it. We can't stop letting people know. And I think that in some ways, the CISA warning that came out I don't know. Of course, it was dumped after 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, so that tells you something. But I think, despite that, it's very timely that it happened to have come out now. I think it's timely that it does. It answers to some people who there's not much pushback on the facts of my report number 3. It's just they're facts. It's data. And when I do get something, it's more along the lines of, well, there's no way that they could have gotten the code in or whatever to do this. And then lo and behold, here comes that CISA warning. And I would not concentrate too much on the particulars that are there, because can I say that, oh, that one particular vulnerability that was used to get that stuff into Mesa to do those bad things? No, it's a pattern. You take this and you take the Tennessee thing and you take things that are being found everywhere, and you have a pattern of lax security, of just a failure to do what is best practices in technical.
I'm sorry. I get excited. Did you see what happened in frickin' Cobb County? Because we're sitting here talking about all these vulnerabilities in the machines themselves, and I'm baffled by the fact that in Cobb County, it's a security flaw. Well, we could call it a feature. That you have to take the results from these machines onto a thumb drive and upload them to the EMS. That in and of itself is a major problem, because you're entrusting that nobody's going to swap out the thumb drives or manipulate them, because we know there's no chain of custody. But in Cobb County, they had 22 of these thumb drives from 11 precincts, and the person running the EMS just happened to forget to upload 7 of them. Something that simple, that basic. We're looking at how these machines can have malicious software and stuff, but we don't have any chain of custody record, and somebody could just, I'm just not going to upload these thumb drives. That is just insane. There's so many things that can go wrong with these systems.
They've got one job, right?
Mm-hmm. And they botched that up in the 2020 election too. You remember when they were doing the hand recount? They're like, hey, we found 3,600 votes in Floyd County, and we found 2,000 votes in this county, and another 500 votes over here. And it's like, what? You're finding this out 3 weeks later?
Yeah, and if I can speak to, well, the primary season we're going into in November. Anyone who follows the things that I say knows that I go very easy on our clerks across the country, because by and large, I believe most of them were as much of a victim, a frontline victim of what happened. They did everything right in a lot of cases, and it still didn't matter. So I give them some slack. But let me tell you now, they know.
Yeah.
And anybody who is watching this who is a clerk or has a friend who's a clerk, and they're now aware of the facts of report number 3 and how that ties into the CISA advisories and the other things that are found all over the place. But say that if you're aware of that and you're a clerk, especially in a Dominion, I don't mean to give the other ones a free pass, but especially in a Dominion county right now, how can you, in good faith, do your job?
Be that negligent.
Because you didn't know in 2020. I'm giving you all a pass on that one, or most of you. Mm. Now you know. And that's a totally different thing. Yep. So please do the right thing. Even if it's just of, you know what, I can't do this. I cannot sign off on this because of the software and the hardware we use and what has happened in other counties. And
Well, when you look at so Fulton right now, I mean, Georgia right now is an absolute disaster, like top to bottom. I mean, we have the DeKalb switch where the hand recount revealed 2,800 missing votes. Then they did another recount and they found another 419 some odd votes. It ended up switching the first place race to third place and vice versa.
Yeah.
And again, just like Williamson, like Nick said earlier, this wouldn't have been picked up on if Michelle Long Spears didn't say, hey, why do I have 0 votes in my precinct when me and my husband both voted for me? Which kind of spurred this off. Now, they did a hearing on Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m., because that's the best time to do a hearing. And in that hearing, they asked, it was funny, Nick, because they actually asked specifically. So this was a technical issue, not like you guys lost memory cards, which was ironic because that's what Cobb had talked about just 2 days earlier. And so what we find, and I want to pull this little shot up here. Dominic from Dominion, he worked for Dominion in the 2020 election. Dominic now runs the EMS, I guess, over at Fulton County. He said that there was an error where the poll managers or precinct managers, when they pulled the flashcards, they didn't select the right files to upload to the card. Now, using Dominion's own manual, we find out that that's a blatant lie, that there is no selecting. Everything is done automatically. There's only one storage device, as far as I know. There's only one storage device on these ICP machines, and that is the memory cards that are inserted. There is no internal memory storage on them. And so when they sit there and tell us that it was a mistake at the precinct level and we got it all fixed out now, and they went and certified, this is the part that really pisses me off, is they went and certified the results and didn't even have the new numbers. They asked him for the new numbers, and he said, I'll get those to you. I'll research it and get those to you. So you go to a hearing where you're going to get your ass chewed for not doing the right thing. You don't even come with the right information. And then the board turns around and tells you, recertifies anyways without the information. And why did they do all this? I'm not blaming the board necessarily, because the Secretary of State said you have to have them done by 9 a.m. on Monday morning. So the Secretary of State's office said, get this done. Anyway, you got to get it across the finish line, much like the what was the Carter guy that did the report in Fulton County? Duct taped it all together, but got it across the finish line. So look, Georgia, for them to sit there and say maintain elections or maintain integrity and faith in our elections, it's an outright lie.
I have a question for Jeff.
Yeah.
And this is because I have a hard stop before 5:30. I just want to make sure I get this in there because, Jeff, you know these systems more than I do. And I've had this debate with people about this. I want to know, because what your data suggests is that there's a predetermined outcome, and it almost seems as if there's no way you can overcome the cheating. And I want to know what your opinion on that is the way these things work. Can you overcome the cheating, or is there just totally a predetermined outcome that there's nothing, no amount of overwhelm can, you can't overcome it?
We can definitely overcome it. It happened in Florida in 2020. Yep. And we have to get our house in order before November. Look at it this way. If you're going to have fake votes, I mean, it's a very complicated thing. You can probably imagine to shift an election, shift votes in an election, because if you're going to do it right, there's a lot of moving pieces, and all these things have to a precinct level. For instance, you can't make changes and suddenly have, even though it occasionally happens, you can't have 120% of people in a precinct vote. So it is a complicated thing, and a lot of it involves, the muled in ballots. Now, if you're going to have fake ballots, you need fake voters. Think of fake voters as inventory. Okay, so your inventory of fake voters it entirely depends upon how much you can inflate your voter roll before that. So that is, job number one is to make sure that these voter rolls are as clean as possible. And that should be an achievable goal if people put enough pressure on it, because most people agree that a voter roll should only contain real people who are eligible to vote. That's not a controversial issue amongst others. So anyway, that inventory they have to work with, that's their inventory. Once the election starts, it's very difficult to add. It becomes very difficult. So the point is, I've used the term flood the fraud in 2020. So the point is, if we get enough people out there to vote and not listen to the doomsayers who are like, oh, it's not, oh, we're never, nothing we can do. Those people are hurting everything every time they say that. We need to get people to vote in record numbers. Changes are being made. We've identified so many of the things they did in 2020. I think they're probably reconsidering whether they want to do things the same way in some ways as they did in 2020, because it's so obvious. It's going to be so obvious that they did it again that we're going to catch it. In the primary, we're catching things in minutes that took months after 2020 to catch. And that's going to go on also. So I think that as long as everyone votes, just get out there and vote. And we Florida broke the algorithm. I think Texas did to a degree. I think North Carolina might have to a degree. A lot of this has been researched and stuff by Draza Smith, if you know who she is. She's brilliant, and we share a lot of data. A lot of these states did not go the way that they thought they would, and they had to then do some really stupid stuff to push that election over the finish line for themselves. Sure. It was much closer than the score. Like the sports thing, it was much closer than the score looked. It was much closer than if you just look at the electoral vote totals. It was razor thin. They just barely pushed this thing over. So I think that as long as we don't listen to the people who are saying it's not worth it, your vote doesn't count anymore, because you know what, if you stay home, then definitely 100%, I'll tell you, your vote doesn't count if you don't vote it. Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Well, you will not elect 100% of the candidates that you don't vote for. I'm just a cog in a wheel here trying to do the best I can. Okay. But I am working with a lot of people around the country. I think we have what we need. So I guess what I'm saying is, you guys are so important too, because you're the ones that getting this information out to everybody. They're the one that's upticking that number of people who think that 2020 was frauded now, probably over 61%. I haven't seen a recent one, but it's probably getting over 60%. And just being a conduit whereby information can get out. I would say to the people at home, trust us. I think we got this. I really do.
That makes me confident.
If you guys stay home and you don't vote, then everything I and other people, I've been in this in 10 months. Some people have been doing it since November 4th, 2020. That everything that we have done for that is for zip, nothing.
Jeff, I said this last night, actually. Even though I'm not totally sold that my vote counts, I still will vote because it's my civic and patriotic duty. And how exactly did we create an entire movement around election integrity? We made them cheat, so it was so damn obvious that it woke up all these people. So if you just stay home, you're depriving the opportunity of having another wave of thousands, if not millions, of Americans waking up. Even if they steal it, then you have, if we have 60% now, you'll have 80%. And at a certain point, they just can't maintain their lies.
Absolutely. And we weren't watching election night 2020. We weren't watching. Do you understand how many good technical eyes are going to be on that election night in 2020, especially for that? We're getting the primary. It's like the primaries are being almost like training for us for November, in that we're able to we're looking at the data almost in real time now as it comes in, and evaluating. And they're not going to be able to get away with all the same things. Now, we've got to watch for those mules. We can't let that happen again. I wish people would just, citizen teams watching the drop boxes in shifts. Okay. Just, in shifts, go out there, play on your phone, but just keep an idea, of what's going on. We got to keep that from happening. We got to get the voter rolls cleaned up. We're not going to obviously be able to make any substantive law changes about early voting or absentee voting between now and November, unfortunately. But there are things that we can affect, and we can just keep our eyes just absolutely peeled.
Nick, I know you got to take off. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, brother. And tomorrow night, folks, we're having a band reunion at 10 p.m. So it's a little bit late, but we got to do it for Neil. Trying to accommodate him a little bit. So we are doing a band reunion. It'll be right here on rumble.com/CanCon tomorrow night, 10 p.m. So Nick, again, thank you for joining me, brother. Master of Q, go keep those anons in check, man.
Will do, man. Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you, Jeff, and thanks for doing what you do. And also thanks to everybody out there, because we said, Jeff's doing the work. We're putting the info out there, but, it would be worthless if it weren't for you guys taking the information and running with it. And so thank you, all of you guys out there. Anyways, I'm out of here.
Plug your channels.
Rumble.com/NickMoCedar, NickMoCedar.locals.com. All right, guys.
There you go. Have a good one, brother. All right, so Jeff, I want to jump into just real quick. Nick also is from Florida, so the three of us are all Floridians here. And what you were saying about Florida, they thought we broke the algorithm here. He won Florida by 375,000 votes, which is unheard of. I mean, it's double what Obama won it in the 2008 record-setting election. And it was funny because watching on election night, they held Florida like at 94%. They would not call Florida. Mm-hmm. And the only thing left in Florida to count was the Panhandle. And if you're from Florida, you know that the Panhandle is blood red. Blood red. There's no way that Joe could have made up 375,000 votes in the Panhandle. Not possible. And so the fact that they kept that so long, I think they might have even called Arizona before they called Florida.
I believe they did. Yes,
yeah,
I believe they did.
Yeah, I think Fox called Arizona before they called Florida. And go ahead, Jeff.
If you want a good thought experiment, look at Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
If we understood more about why Alaska wasn't called for so long, I think it's a big clue of what was going on. That's all I'm going to say.
Does it have anything to do with the kill chain, the very last scene in Kill Chain?
Maybe.
So if you know the very last scene in Kill Chain, they're talking specifically about Alaska. So anyways, Jeff, I got a couple questions from some listeners on locals that I want to get to real quick. I know Andrew threw up another Rumble rant real quick. He says 2022, all the poll watchers need to get extra rest before going election day. Probably going to be a long night watching for suitcases and last minute boxes of ballots showing up. Absolutely. Jumping into the locals, these are not screened, so I'm just going to read them. Somebody said per Detod 316 on Telegram, the vice president of Dominion Voting Systems in 2015 was a Serbian named Goran Obradovic, who also holds multiple patents for the machines, also a friend of Hunter Biden ally, Vuk Jeremic. Think this is where the shady code comes from. I've heard a lot about this, about the Serbian code, the coders in Serbia that wrote the Dominion code, and how it's just sloppy code coming from over there. It's not to the standards that we would normally have in the United States. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, if anyone questions the Serbian connection, I found the name. One of the developers in Serbia actually put his name in a file in the system. So that if anybody's questioning whether that's real or not, yeah, it's real. There's no question about that. I thought that was kind of amusing to find, but they did outsource at least some of the coding for that to Serbia. And
can we stop for 1 second?
Yeah.
Critical infrastructure, we're subcontracting it out. First off, it's going to a a private entity such as Dominion that has private investors through Staple Street Capital that we don't know about, UBS Securities, $400 million a month before the election, dumped into Staple Street Capital through UBS Securities LLC. How the hell is that permissible?
Well, we farm out making our nukes overseas, right?
Don't tell me that.
No, seriously. It's one of those things that, I mean, forget your party, forget liberal or conservative. How could we allow a system that does have foreign influence like that to be used in a critical infrastructure? And I don't care if it's for elections or the post office. It's not a good idea.
Yeah. And we're not even talking about like a hostile, like a friendly country. We're not talking like sending it to, the UK or France or Germany or, a strong NATO ally, even though I wouldn't trust them either. But we're talking about Serbia. I mean,
it's beyond the pale. And I think about this a lot. I'll just say that. Can I address the last one though about the poll watchers and the volunteers?
Absolutely.
And I'll speak directly to all of you. And by the way, hello, Raccoon Army, as well. Raccoon Army is the best army. I don't know if you know that, CanCon, but it is. If you are a volunteer, a poll watcher, whether you're at a polling place or whether you're in the central count, and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be doing it, and someone tells you to leave, make them call the cops.
Yep.
Because I guarantee you they probably won't. And if they do, get all the cell phone footage you can of it. Do not acquiesce. Do not be like, oh, okay, all right, fine, which is our normal way of doing things, frankly, because we tend to be nice, polite people. And somebody likes us to leave, oh, they must have a very good reason for us to leave. We will. No. Any reason they have to take you away from what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be doing it, when you're supposed to be doing it, do not comply.
Yes. And
that single thing is the amount of fraud that they can do just went down.
Yeah.
That one single thing.
And don't, and when you go to challenge something, don't let them say you can't challenge this or,
No, use your whatever rights you have and know what your rights are as far as what job you're doing, know them backwards and forwards, and do not budge an inch because they have not earned our cooperation, beyond what is, our normal, what we're supposed to, obviously. But if someone tells you to do something that is contrary to what you're supposed to be doing, honestly, I don't, if it were me, like I said, I would say, if you want me to leave, call the police.
Yep.
And I suspect the police would be more upset with the person that called them in that circumstance than they would you, in that circumstance. So that's that reminded me of that whenever they had that Rumble rant there.
Yeah, during the Pennsylvania primary, we had the Audit the Vote PA girls on our program to talk about it, and one of them was a poll watcher, and they said they were still keeping them 25 feet away, and I said, you would have had to arrest me to keep me from being over your neck. There's no more COVID. You're not getting away with that stuff. If you want us to wear a mask, fine, whatever. I'm not going to fight this, but you're not keeping me 25 feet away. So I told them I would go to jail, get arrested. It's a wrongful arrest, take care of that at the end, but raise hell. Do not let them do what they did to us again, especially what they did in Michigan, where they kept them, penned up, if you will, hundreds of feet away from where it was going on, when just the night before the judge said, no, you get qualitative access to the ballot, 6 feet, whatever it was, and they didn't give it to them. So good point on that. And that last question was from Pat Teho, Minnesota. Now I want to go to Charles A. Says, does Jeff find it odd when the Mesa County DA gave the explanation on what happened in Mesa County that there was no technical or mathematical experts present to refute you and your colleagues' research? It was as if it was a gaslighting session done by lawyers and politicians designed to explain away anomalies.
I couldn't have said that better myself, whoever that was.
Charles A.
Yeah, and I know who they consulted technical experts. I know they did. They asked Dominion. So it's mind blown when you consider that's what they did. They went to that report has some significant allegations that have to be pointed at Dominion. So if he's investigating those allegations in my report, you have your only source of technical refutation, the person who is being accused, which, frankly, my report is accusing them of at least allowing it to happen, if not causing it to happen. So spot on.
You brought up a really good point there about, some accusations and consulting with Dominion and all that. And, it brings me to the reject and delete. So, part of this hearing was that they're saying that, if there's this discrepancy, this issue, you should do this process called reject and delete. And this was apparently something that Dominion would have told them if they called them, but it's not in the manual. So when you're dealing, again, with critical infrastructure on votes, on something that's processed, chain of custody records, all this stuff, how dangerous is it to go outside the box and use a method like reject and delete that's not even mentioned in the user manual?
And I'm not even sure that it exists, because there is a log file that logs essentially every command, everything that the election server is told to do at quite a low level. And I include quite a bit of detail in my report right from that log. And there is nothing that looks anything like that. I think remember that old show, Halt and Catch Fire, which used to be an old joke when I was a tiny little programmer. They might have just made it up. I could be wrong on that, but nobody that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of people, knew anything he's talking about, unless it has something to do with the time drift, maybe.
Had to throw in the time drift.
Had to throw in. It's just a vote to the left and a bash to the right.
Well, that brings me back to the mitigations that they put in the CISA report, where the first mitigation recommendation is to contact Dominion Systems to determine which software and or firmware updates need to be applied. Dominion Voting Systems reports to CISA that the above vulnerabilities have been addressed in subsequent software versions. So, of course, anytime something goes wrong, don't resort to the manual. Don't do anything like that. Just contact Dominion. They'll get you remotely hooked up and fixed.
That line right there shows a critical flaw in our whole system.
Yes, absolutely.
Because our critical infrastructures of elections, I would think, should be as or more secure than our banking industry.
100%.
And so what that line means is that there is zero concern that anything that they find could be malicious. Zero. If they, because they wouldn't have gone running right away. That would have been their thing. Oh, we went to them and said, oh, can you fix this? I mean, if you design security for a bank, you know that any flaw you leave is eventually, probably sooner rather than later, going to be exploited by people who want to steal money. And why is in our election, national election hierarchy, do we make the exact opposite assumption? Mm-hmm. Oh, nobody would ever try to do anything malicious. We'll trust them. That's really what that line's saying. That line's saying, oh, we implicitly trust that this was not anything intentional.
I hate it when they say that. When they sit there and they say like, oh yeah, well there is this vulnerability, but there's no evidence that it's been exploited or anything along those lines. And you think about this, and you're like, well, when you look at somebody that commits a crime, especially a crime that would be this sophisticated and with this much of a risk reward, they're going to cover their assets very, very well.
Absolutely.
And even then, I mean, Jeff, I know we don't have that much time on this, but I would love to go through the mitigations and just break down what happened in Georgia, where this report is based out of, and how when they say, like looking at it, let me just pull it up. I'll just run through it real quick. When they say things like ensure compliance with chain of custody, the chain of custody in Georgia is an absolute disaster from top to bottom. We don't have a single ballot image from the original scans for the ballot images. The original scans are gone, as well as the validation files that go with them, so that the only images you have left are these images from the second scan, and that's why you get stuff like this. This is the ballot I was showing you earlier, where it's the same exact ballot from the original count to the recount, and a vote got added somehow. How does that happen? And you look at this, and a lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, that's a one-off. That was just a glitch or something." Like, this is actual maladministration. Like, this is actual fraud right here.
Can you bring it back up for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to make sure people watching understand. This on the left-hand side is clearly, anyone would look at that and say that is a vote for Donald Trump. In the copy, when they did the recount, you now have that. You see, not only is there a vote for Donald Trump, there is now a vote for Joe Jorgensen. What this does is it removes one vote. This just one ballot right here that will remove the vote for Trump, because if a person chooses two people in a race, they're both thrown out. I just want to make sure people understand that. That is the effect of what you just showed. The effect of what you just showed right there was the fraudulent taking away of just one, because you only showed one ballot, one vote from Trump, and you can see how easy it was to do. You didn't have to do anything but add some ink to an oval.
Yeah, and when you look at the in-person images that are missing, and again, like we said, when you're missing the validation files, if you had the Shaw files, you could at least validate that the duplicated images in the second count, the ones that were actually scanned and stored, if you have the Shaw files from the first account, at least then you can validate that they haven't been tampered with, they haven't been messed with. When you look at the Halderman report, where he's literally telling you that you can change votes. I mean, he's telling you, folks, you can alter votes recorded, and his students are telling you could do it faster and you can scan a vote. And then they sit there and they lie to you, bald-faced, straight-faced, and they tell you that there's no evidence. There's either one of two things. They're either covering it up completely, or they didn't bother looking at all.
Well, they obviously haven't seen report number 3, or they would say this is potential evidence. Absolutely, 91,000 ballots or so in Mesa County. You know how many Shaw files there were?
How many?
0.
When
I say, people say, well, you can check these against the ballot images. There's no validation files for the ballot images. There's no way to tell that they're the originals.
And then
back to the paper, if the original paper still exists, and after Maricopa and other places, you have to have a very serious doubt about that. So the ballot images, and like that, talk about it, how Mesa is like other places. I've talked to Favorito and a couple other people, about that, and the fact that the Shaw files just not being there, it hampers any ability to use those images, because there's no chain of custody for them. It's shattered.
Have you, man? I got to bring you back on, because I've got one of the poll managers sitting there talking about her time in the pre-election when they were doing logic and accuracy testing, and she didn't even realize this. She's telling us, me and one of the investigators I work with, Kevin, she's telling us that they when they were doing the logic and accuracy testing, they printed out the ballots and ran them through all the different scanners. And we said, well, they printed the ballots from each BMD, from each ICX, and she said no, they only used 5 or 6 of them. That's not a logic and accuracy test. You're supposed to print a sample from every single machine and make sure that it's working properly, especially when you have this de minimis update that you're doing literally at the last minute. You're updating every single machine with this. It's hard.
I mean, you're familiar. I don't have much time. I mean, you're familiar, at least in the what the report said about Antrim. which are incomplete. The problems that were encountered in Antrim, that somehow passed the logic and accuracy test, which blows my mind.
Yes.
That's a question I've never heard anybody say. And people say, well, the logic and accuracy test only affects the tabulators or scanners, whatever. A lot of the problems there were the tabulators and scanners, the ones that were not able to handle what was going on. Yet somehow it passed the logic. It had to have passed the logic and accuracy test with flying colors. Of course, if you go and you ask somebody for records of their logic and accuracy test, those seem to never exist. Those are, like soap bubbles. Apparently, they pop and are gone as soon as they're done with it.
Yeah. Somebody asked me to put
If
this
you're
up.
out there, prove me wrong. Send me one.
Well, and we're seeing the same thing in Fulton County, excuse me, not Fulton, in DeKalb County. They're saying the same thing, that there was a ballot configuration issue because a candidate dropped off. And so they had to, the ballot, the configuration was off in the machine, which really didn't make sense to me, because if you look at the ballots that got switched by method of voting, the mail-in ballots didn't really vary that much, minimal compared to the in-person ballots. The in-person ballots, night and day shifts. I mean, 3,000 votes, one way for one candidate, whereas the other ones were like 20, 30, 40 votes. And you would think that the mail-in ballots that are pre-printed, filled out by hand and all that, they would be the ones that would have the biggest discrepancy, because they were made months and months ago or weeks and weeks ago, whereas the in-person ballot is on a touchscreen device that could have been updated almost immediately. And, you could have changed that race out so that it was accurately done. But why do you see the discrepancy on the in-person voting?
It makes little sense.
Yes.
As many, everything else we've talked about here.
All right.
And the only way the people who are opposing us on this effort is the only thing they have is to just automatically say, no. Think about Jonathan Frakes on that Beyond Belief show. Never happened. We made it up.
All right, let me jump back in here. Just a couple more questions, and we'll cut you loose here. Question for Jeff. This is from Jeremy DW. Says, were there any Dominion executable files on the image? And if so, did you attempt to decompile to get to the underlying code?
That would have, there are legal consequences in decompiling code. If someone were to decompile, what they found would certainly not be admissible in court, probably because it would be seen as a trade secret / copyright / whatever violation. So because I'd rather be sitting here rather than in a jail, I can't speak to any decompiling of Dominion executables. But if anybody out there's done it, call me.
All right, and the last question here, and this is from Andrew. He says, if you had to redo your entire investigation / audit on a new system without any absolute timestamps, would relative timestamps be enough to accurately draw conclusions about what happened? For example, imagine a system without software, only a clock that recorded time of each of events on election day. Everything else outside of election day is not written, only read.
Yes, because sequence matters. Sequence matters. Obviously, you like to have timestamps when you get them, because then you can coordinate them with other events that are going on. But cast vote records, I mentioned earlier, you replay the election. Those do not generally have timestamps. They just have a sequence. And those are plenty useful. So there's your example.
Okay. All right. I think, let's see. Somebody said, got a Rumble rant here real quick. Says this is an extra $5 to buy Jeff half a coffee, hoping it helps you bribe him to come on your show. Well, I will have to buy him a coffee. If I'm ever up in Orlando, I will have to link up with him and buy him a coffee.
You're welcome anytime.
Seekers Unite. Thank you. I love it up there. My wife and I, believe it or not, we still like Disney. People don't understand that when they're like, cancel Disney. If you're from Florida, you can't cancel Disney. Disney is in our blood.
It really causes a lot of,
I know. I'm not at this point. I'm not renewing my annual pass, but
you still have one.
Yeah.
You're lucky. Why?
What's that?
You're a lucky guy.
Well, when they shut down in COVID, it got canceled. But when they reopened for the passes, they wouldn't let any new ones. But if you had a pass from before, you were grandfathered in. So we took it, because it was fairly cheap and all this other stuff. And we've got the cheapest one. It's like $50-$60 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
So, we like to go up there, and I'm a Star Wars geek, so I like that kind of stuff. Seekers Unite says, thank you, Jeff. See you all in the comments at Alone Raccoon. I guess that's your Telegram, t.me/Alone Raccoon.
Yeah, that's my main channel. Yes, a Lone Raccoon.
All right. Well, Jeff, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I think this was an excellent, productive conversation. Your wealth of knowledge in this field and everything that you've seen, I definitely got to have you back on again. Draza actually texted me while we were doing this, so I don't know if maybe she was watching and that's why she texted me, but we'll have to get the two of you on together and do a breakdown of everything that we've seen here, because the momentum is on our side right now. It is hot, and I think that we're winning.
It is. We are now. Yeah, we are. Last few months have been a real sea change of what's going on. Now they're the ones backpedaling. They're the ones trying to run out the clock. And frankly, I think the clock is ticking louder for them now than it was for us, even though we all had that same kind of clock. I think they're more worried about it now than we are.
Amen. All right, Jeff, before we drop out of here, any last words, any social media plugs, whatever you got?
Well, yeah, I have a very, very productive channel. If you come to my channel at Telegram, A Lone Raccoon, and join my chat, this is not just some sort of a coffee clutch. It is a working group. I need your help. I've got people who are moving mountains in their communities and their counties and states. I mean, if you are sitting back there wanting, what can I do? I sure like to do something to help the situation. You will find something productive and useful and valuable to do if you want to, and that's not so much me as it is just the wonderful people who have decided to be part of my channel.
Amen. So there you go, guys. t.me/Alone Raccoon. And Jeffrey O'Donnell, thank you again so much for joining me, sir, and thank you so much for all your hard work out there in Colorado. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's we all have to do what we can do, and same back to you, doing the Lord's work there, sir. So thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Have a great day, sir.
You too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this show here. Another special thank you to Nick Moseder for joining us in this episode, as well as Jeff O'Donnell. What an incredible wealth of knowledge, man. I could probably do a show with Jeff for like another 2 hours, but I'm actually off to a Florida meeting down here with our local GOP, meeting with our election supervisor, who is a Democrat down here. So we're going over to see what's going on in Florida, and I'm probably, I don't know, hopefully I don't end up in jail. I don't think I will, but we'll see. All right, guys, thank you guys all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Be sure to check out mypillow.com. Promo code CanCon. Save $90 right now on my slippers. I told you guys I was wearing them, and I'd show you. I took them off. All right. Make sure to go get your own pair. Father's Day is coming up, so it makes a great gift. All right, guys, stay frosty. God bless each and every one of you. God bless America. Make the fortune cookie country pay for this.
Yeah, it's true that I learned my lessons, but that's not up to you. When you wonder why I have my aggressions, your decisions cost me too. Honest star, truly sincere, and favored is the one of light.
Laugh for that, you stupid bastard.
You are fake news.